Hello, and welcome back to another presentation on the DevOps Handbook. We are Group 7, Brittany, Herrera, Alexandra, Lozano, and Eddie Pincay. This week we'll be going over Chapter 19, which is Enable and Inject Learning into Daily Work. So this chapter talks a lot about failures and about how to use our failures to help the organization learn and grow. To enable us to safely work within complex systems, our organizations must become even better at self-diagnostics and self-improvement, and must be skilled at detecting problems, solving them, and multiplying the effects by making the solutions available throughout the organization. This creates a dynamic system of learning that allows us to understand our mistakes and translate that understanding into actions that prevent those mistakes from reoccurring in the future. Establish a just learning culture. So the word that sticks out for me is humility. When we have a problem, we like to hide that sometimes, but in this case, when we have a problem and we cause an issue, it's important to share that issue with other people in our organization to prevent the same thing from happening. John Oswald, Director of de Tecnologia de ETSI, says when engineers make mistakes and feel safe when giving details about it, they are not only willing to be held accountable, they are also enthusiastic in helping the rest of the company avoid the same error in the future. This is what creates organizational learning. Schedule blameless post-mortem meetings after accident occurs. So I'm going to highlight the word blameless. We've got to get used to sharing our problem and the problem that we caused throughout the company. We don't want people to feel bad when they're sharing the information, so I'm going to highlight the blameless word in this. Our first task in the blameless postmortem meeting is to record our best understanding of the timeline of relevant events as they occurred. This includes all actions we took and at what time, what effects we observed, all investigation paths we followed, and what resolutions were considered. To enable these outcomes, we must be rigorous about recording details and reinforcing a culture that information can be shared without fear of punishment or retribution. Because of this, especially for our first few postmortems, it may be helpful to have the meeting led by a trained facilitator who wasn't involved in the accident. Now that we've had this meeting and we're sharing with everyone that we caused the problem, yes, it's important to spread throughout the organization. After we conduct a blameless postmortem meeting, we should widely announce the availability of the meeting notes and any associated artifacts with everything and everyone. This will help learning throughout the organization. Decrease incident tolerances to find ever weaker failure signals. As organizations learn how to see and solve problems effectively and efficiently, they need to decrease the threshold of what constitutes a problem in order to keep learning. Our work in the technology value stream, like space travel, should be approached as a fundamentally experimental endeavor and managed that way. Redefine failure and encourage calculated risk-taking. Leaders are to continue to reinforce that everyone should feel both comfortable and responsible for surfacing and learning from failures. Roy Report says failures are what organizations need. Then we will have implementations that will be safer every day. He also says that DevOps must allow this sort of innovation and the resulting risk of people making mistakes. Yes, you'll have more failures in production, but that's a good thing and should not be punished. Inject production failures to enable resilience and learning. Resilience requires that we first define our failure modes and then perform testing to ensure that these failure modes operate as designed. Michael Nygaard, author of the Release It, Design and Deploy Production of Ready Software, says, like building crumpled zones into cars to absorb impacts and get passengers safe, you can decide what features of the system are indispensable and build in failure modes that keep cracks away from those features. If you do not design your failure nodes, then you will get whatever unpredictable you want and usually dangerous. One happens to emerge. Institute game days to rehearse failures. So in this case, It's important that our game day is some day that we simulate accidents so that we can predict the outcomes. First, we schedule a catastrophe, such as the simulated destruction of the entire data system. And then we give teams time to prepare to emulate all the single points of failure and to create the necessary monitoring procedures. Our game day team defines and executes drills, such as conducting database failures and turning off an important network connection to expose problems and then define processes. Any problem or difficulties that are encountered are identified, addressed, and tested again at the scheduled time. We then execute the outage. The disaster recovery program. So an excellent example of this is Google's disaster recovery program. It simulated an earthquake in the Silicon Valley that resulted in a complete loss of power. Some of the learning that was gained was that when connectivity was lost, the failure to the engineer workstations didn't work. Engineers didn't know how to access a conference call bridge, or the bridge only had capacity for 50 people, or they needed a new conference call provider who would allow them to kick off engineers who had subjected the entire conference to hold music. And they also said when the data centers ran out of the diesel for the backup generators, no one knew the procedure for making emergency purchases throughout the supplier, resulting in someone using a personal credit card to purchase $50,000 worth of diesel. These were all things that we learned from this simulation. By creating failure in a controlled situation, we can practice and create the playbooks we need. One of the other outputs of game day is that people actually know who to call and know who to talk to. By doing this, they develop relationships with people in other departments so they can work together during an incident, turning conscious actions into unconscious actions that are able to become routine. So, with concluding in this chapter, it's important that we learn from our mistakes, and it's not a bad thing. We must create a culture of learning where all can learn, where we must change the meaning of the word fails. We must learn from failures by creating a learning environment where groups recover easily. After the post-mortem meetings, we must publish it in the places where everyone can see it. Failure helps us to achieve secure implementations. The only sustainable competitive advantage is an organization's ability to learn faster than the competition. This was an excellent chapter to go over, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Please let us know if you have any questions, and let us know if you have any feedback. We look forward to doing another presentation next week. Thank you.